Thank you, Councilman Rotozawa. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you, KIUC and the administration team for being here. You know, the Lahaina fire sparked a home run with all of us to make sure that we're taking a proactive approach. But I believe prior to Lahaina, especially on the west side, those fires that threaten your power lines out there, it's a very crucial and important area to keep the hazard fire mitigation plan in place. So we called this meeting, we had ADC and KA last meeting, and we just wanted to make sure that you guys have the support you need from the county fire department, from our public works, and if you need any kind of mitigation out there, and we want to know what you guys are doing to be proactive, please come up and share with us our cooperative company and what they do. Thank you, Mr. Brad Rockwell and Mr. John Cox and everybody else in here. Beth, and please.
Good morning, council members. Brad Rockwell, Chief of Operations for Kauai Island Utility Cooperative, and I have also John Cox, our Transmission and Distribution Manager, with me, Cameron Cruz, our Engineering and Technology Manager, and of course Beth Amaro, Communications Member Services Manager. So if you don't mind, I just have some slides that I'd like to share, a brief presentation, and then we can have a discussion. Okay, thank you. Just first a couple of slides on a little more broad perhaps than wildfire mitigation, just emergency preparedness overview. KIUC has multiple plans regarding our emergency preparedness. We submit preparedness and recovery plan annually to the Public Utility Commission. You know, we are wholly regulated by the State Public Utility Commission, so we have a number of requirements, both us and Hawaiian Electric companies, that we have to meet through that regulation. We also developed a hurricane playbook in 2019 that's a little more tailored and specific for hurricane response. Kind of goes into a deep dive of Iniki and lessons learned from the notes and things we could pull, and talking with folks that were still working at the company at the time before they all retired. So a lot of lessons learned in there. We also have a cyber incident response and recovery plan that was recently adopted, and then following Lahaina, we got to work on a wildfire mitigation plan just to formalize a lot of efforts that maybe weren't in one central location. The PUC has also required all utility companies in the state to develop and file a natural hazard mitigation plan by August of this year. And so that's in the works as well. We, of course, work closely with Kauai Emergency Management Agency and other partners throughout the state when it comes to emergency preparedness. Somewhat unique in the utility space in the state, since we are an electric cooperative, we have access to National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, and also since we are a private nonprofit utility, KIUC is eligible for 75% FEMA reimbursement of recovery costs during a declared emergency. So that's a huge benefit to the community just by virtue of us being an electric cooperative.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. Okay, on wildfire mitigation specifically, this is how we think about our wildfire mitigation efforts. And so kind of starting at the bottom of the pyramid is our kind of every day of the year system resilience, our normal work that goes on year-round for hardening the system, looking at opportunities to improve and protect the community against starting a wildfire. That includes enhanced vegetation management to minimize risk and maintain reliability, and asset inspections. So we've been broadening our asset inspection, which we'll get into in some slides following this. We also, the next tier up is situational awareness and weather monitoring. So we also have some slides on that to talk a little bit more. And then as we get into more targeted, weather conditions that include fire weather watch and red flag warning days, we have to pay close attention to the weather. We adopt some additional operational protocols, And that might include, isolating some communities, as we have done in the past last year, where we isolated a stretch of Mahalapu and Kauai. Those were deemed to be high risk for the number of members that they served. And so we went ahead and took proactive measures to isolate those communities. Okay. System resilience projects. Vegetation management is a huge effort. It's something we've always done and something we're doing more of now and will continue to do more of. We have a fairly significant budget. We have had trouble in the past keeping our crews maintained. When you're talking about vegetation management for an electric utility, it's a little bit different from other entities that do this type of work, because our crews need to be certified to be working around energized electrical lines. So our focus is really to only cut in that space around the lines. We're not going to go and clear cut, because our tree trimmers are specialized and certified to be working there, so they're probably going to be a higher cost than other tree trimmers. So we don't necessarily want them mowing and clear cutting things and that kind of thing. They're going to come in and they're like a targeted tactical team that's going to just get the critical areas, so then other people, homeowners or county or other vegetation crews, can come in and do the stuff that's well outside our energized lines. Drone inspections. This has been a really huge thing for us this year. We've been bringing teams out, and some of you may have gotten our notifications in the community when we're going to be flying in certain areas. We let the members know ahead of time that you may see these crews and the drones flying around. This is what they're looking at. So in the upper right, that's an example of the infrared photos that they take of our assets, where they're looking for hot spots, and then we'll review that and we'll see if there's any potential failure points that we need to go address. The bottom right is an example of a high resolution photo, something that you probably wouldn't see from the ground if you're driving and patrolling, because that insulator might be up top, something you can't see from down below. And so you see that porcelain starting to degrade, and so that's going to create a path of electricity potentially to go and cause a fault, which causes power outages or maybe even an arc and potential wildfire issue. So by seeing that, we can get out there and change that insulator before the big problem occurs. And then in the lower left, we have an example of our LiDAR. So that is basically a cloud point that it's going to show where we have vegetation encroachment along our power lines. You can kind of tell from the picture, you see where the power lines are, and then those red and yellow areas are, they've got it set for, I think it's like different trigger levels, like 1 foot, 3 foot, 5 feet from our lines, and we can have it show up as different colors, so we can get our tree trimming crews to get out there and say, hey, you need to hit these high priority areas first. Pole testing. Most of our poles are wood poles. We have over 16,000 of them, so our goal is to get all of them inspected roughly every 8 to 10 years. And so we're working hard and adopted a new test procedure using this Thor hammer that will allow us to test many more poles quicker, and so far we're seeing good results from it. We've brought in an extra contract crew specifically focused on pole replacement. So as these test results come in, we're sending our contract crews out to replace those poles, and they're doing at least 2 poles a day typically. Conductor modifications is another system resilience improvement effort that we have going on, and that can include a number of things. So bare secondary wire is, as you see in the diagram, is what goes kind of down the streets into your homes. That's on the low side of the transformer, the lower voltage stuff. And so there's some areas where that's bare wire, but most of the newer stuff and most of the island is actually insulated or covered on that secondary wire. So we want to replace all the bare sections with the stuff that's, got insulation on it. So that if those lines come down, they're not going to cause a spark. And so we're in the process of doing that. And then we also have spacer cable and tree wire, which is, you see examples of that on the right-hand side, where you can see that there's a jacket or a cover on the bare metal conductor. And so that helps if you're going through a heavily wooded areas or areas that are challenging to keep up with vegetation management, because the trees can hit those lines and they're not going to cause a problem. We're also doing recloser upgrades and fusing upgrades. And so some of the things we're going to be looking at doing is changing our typical fuses, which are on the left, that have been used in the utility industry for many decades, to something called non-expulsion fuses. So when they blow, they're not going to push out metal slag, which could fall on the ground and start an ignition. So it will be self-contained and will avoid getting anything falling to the ground. By installing these different pole top reclosers, it can help us to do the power isolation efforts a little bit better. We can target specific areas where we think there's a potential wildfire threat, while keeping power to other people that aren't necessarily in that same wildfire threat area. So it gives us more flexibility in how we isolate different sections of our system. Okay, so situational awareness and weather monitoring, that's another important aspect of this. And what we realized following Lahaina is that we didn't have a lot of good weather data coming in on Kauai. I think the state only maintains about 4 or 5 sites around the island. And in talking with the National Weather Service folks in Honolulu, they told us that when they declare a red flag warning, it's statewide, and it's based on conditions at Honolulu Airport. They use Honolulu Airport conditions as a proxy for the state. So even though Honolulu Airport may be getting these conditions, you might not see those same red flag conditions, for example, on the west side of Kauai. So what we did is we went and installed a bunch more weather stations all over the island, specifically targeted where we have assets and infrastructure, and so that we can get real-time weather monitoring when we get into the fire season, and so we can know if we're having a problem with high wind speeds in specific parts of the island that might drive us to want to do some power isolation efforts. We're also working with DOFA and DOFA folks here on Kauai to see if we can get this fire danger rating adjective pushed out, and this would be something from the local level, the experts that are, the ones who work in the forest on Kauai, to let us know what the conditions are on the ground. And, if you've been around the mainland at national parks, you're probably familiar with Smokey the Bear. And when you enter a national park, you see these signs that they have out there that tell you, what the fire danger is on that specific day. It's kind of like that. We're looking to get that kind of information pushed out. And that would feed into something that we hope to adopt eventually, is this daily situational awareness tool that will allow us on a daily basis to look at, where do we have potential high-risk areas on the island, and what will that drive us to do as far as power isolation. You may have also heard about the statewide effort to adopt these N5 sensors, and this is a federal government pilot with the state and counties. Governor Green, you see there in the picture, announced this a few months ago, and Kauai Fire Department has reached out to us, and they're looking to install some of these sensors on some of our poles, but also in other assets, county buildings and things like that. And so that will be another effort that's going forward too. That's more of not necessarily our focus. Our focus is on trying to prevent an ignition. This is something that would actually be an early indication of where there is potentially a fire. So that's more of a KFD and county effort. And then finally, our operational procedures. So when we get into red flag warning days, we're going to be watching the real-time weather conditions to help inform our decisions. We have sensitive protection settings that we can implement in our relay.
Did you call back to order? Councilmember Cowdy, do you want to?
I think I kind of almost got my question answered. My simple question was, if people see areas where the poles are leaning into the, or the bush is leaning into the poles and there's arcing that's visible, what should they do?
Yeah, and anytime there's a concern if people see something with the power lines, it would be really helpful. Most people have phones these days with a camera. If you could take a picture of it and preferably a couple pictures, and then wherever the nearest pole is, if usually there's like a yellow pole tag on it with some numbers, you could take a picture of that, then we'll know exactly where that location is. And you could send an email to, what is it, like info@kiuc.coop.
info@kiuc.coop.
COOP, yep.
All right,
And we can
I will
look into
put
it.
that in my phone. Those are my questions. Thank you guys for being here and for being proactive.
Councilmember DeCosta?
Yeah, I normally have a whole bunch of questions because the reason to put this on the agenda, but today I just have a bunch of praise. I'm very impressed with what's going on. I spoke with Councilmember Kagawa early on, and we see what's happening to Maui. We see it's a greed situation that the lawyers are jumping on and holding HECO so accountable. And the bottom line is there was some brush that wasn't managed. And yes, we're going to have some electric sparks here and there, but the landowners should have taken care of their brush. And I want our Kauai community to know right now on record that you guys are doing proactive measures to keep our island safe. And we appreciate all that you guys do. I appreciate during the last fire that we had, I know I called you, Brad, and John, and you guys returned my call, and we spoke about the power lines. There was actually KAs, not KIUCs. So I feel like I'm part of the team, even if I'm not. But thank you for making me feel important, and thank you for being proactive for our Kauai people. That is very important for our people to know. So thank all four of you, and thank all the people that work for KIUC, from the whole lineman, line crew, line ladies, all the way up to administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Further question?
I have a
Go ahead.
comment,
Right,
but
go
it's
ahead.
a comment.
Go ahead.
Just even to put it out to the public, next Thursday at the Lihui Business Association, we have Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization, KEMA, Kauai Fire Department, and the Division of Forestry and Wildlife. I didn't think to put you on that board, but like if, on that panel, 4 is kind of a lot. But you guys usually come to LBA meetings, Lihui Business Association at Duke's at 7:30. But I have an extra emphasis on inviting homeowners associations and community associations, business associations, with an idea of trying to work on the fire-wise planning. So I'm sure you guys are always an asset at any event that you're at. Just kind of letting you know and letting the public know that we're all large landowners, stakeholders, everybody's working together. And so thank you, but that might be a good place for some of you or one of you to be there.
All right. Thank you. You guys got anything else you want to share? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak? Alice?
Alice Parker, for the record. I am concerned with brush around the fire, up utility poles. I took the 500 bus to Honolulu on Monday, and many of the utility poles are enwrapped in branches. Now that to me would be the highway department and the utility company, because luckily there's enough rain that way that they don't get as much drying out. But I'm especially sensitive to that situation. As you know, I live at Lihui Gardens, and we had a situation with a pole and wires right down on the highway there. And I live in D building, which is right adjacent to where that fire was, but they caught it. KIUC caught and cut the power, so it diminished the chance of a spreading fire, but we really need to take care of that before we have a disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Anybody else wishing to speak? Seeing none, final discussion? Councilmember
Yeah,
Bosan?
I'd like to thank Councilmember De Costa for putting this on the agenda and thank KIUC and all the members for sharing the information. Probably one of the most thorough things to see how much effort is being done to protect our community. I mean, there's the little things from that explanation how you can stop a breakage or open a breakage. I think that really helps rest assure a lot of our community after witnessing some of the most challenging times we've seen in Hawaii history. To see all this proactive work being done is really, 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 really grateful. We feel really grateful for that, especially in areas that, as we look at fire mitigation and just in general disaster preparedness, we don't have a lot of options. And so these measures are pretty much the measures that we need to take. And it's, once again, our co-op is leading the way in things that we hope them to lead. And so thank you again for having this on the agenda.
Anybody else?